This is Missy Lynx, and you're listening to the Indie Sports Car Podcast.
Welcome, ICB fans, to a weekend special show. What's up, Missy?
Hello, hello. And tonight we have a special guest joining us from the NRF1 podcast, co-host. You can find him at Twitter at his PEDHG56. Welcome, Perry, to the show. Welcome, Perry.
Thank you, Missy, for having me. Thank you, Frank.
Perry, I want to thank you, sir. I was on your podcast about a week ago or so. I'd say now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The NRF1 podcast. I try to never miss it, but you guys put out 3 shows in the middle of the week, break it up a little bit. I like the originality. I like it, and it's a great F1 podcast. If for all the many F1 fans that listen to the show that also love IndyCar, but are F1's their number one love. This show's for you guys. So because Baku, I would say, was probably the most exciting F1 race since I have a hard time remembering. Since when, but that's why we asked you to come on and to talk about it, because there was a lot of different things that happened. I mean, not only Vettel using his car as a weapon that you're taught not to do.
I know, and you almost feel bad saying it was one of the best, one of the most exciting races because Vettel, slammed into somebody. But...
and no better person than Hamilton of all people. So I mean, all the crap.
No, but there was plenty that happened in that race, wasn't there? So I mean, it's great.
It really was. I mean, it was everything you could possibly want to have happen. It happened in that race. I mean, really, it was just chock full of everything. So
yeah, it went. I mean, it did. It's and I get exactly the point that you're making, Missy, when you're saying you don't want to say it was an exciting race, because that's actually really a negative thing that happened, and it paints the sport potentially in a fairly negative light. But you had someone come from the back of the grid, chase all the way through. You had exciting restarts. You had people being caught sleeping. You had people going for gaps. Maybe the gap wasn't there. Maybe the gap was there. You had 3-car wide racing going into the first corner. You had someone getting overtaken on the very last corner coming out of the last straight. Oh. I mean, it's been so long since we've had something that actually made me get out of a seat and start shouting excitedly at the TV for things that were happening on it. I think maybe Canada 2012, I think it was, the year where Jenson Button ended up winning from the back of the grid, and it was delayed for hours and hours on end because of the rain, and they couldn't get the rain off the track, and then it all restarted and everything. I mean, and that was a fantastic race, and this blew that one out of the water.
Oh yeah, I mean, this one will stay in the memory of anybody who's watched it for a long time. That's for sure. So,
yeah, I must admit, I did watch the whole thing twice, actually. I went back and watched it twice, which I normally don't do, and I paid attention to the whole thing, because most of the time I'll, get up and do things, in the middle of it. But this one, I paid attention twice to this one, so it was a good F1 race.
I think that's a testament to it. You've hit it spot on there. I think a lot of people who watch Formula One, I'm not talking for every fan out there, but even myself as well, there is always a middle bit in the race where you've had the start, maybe you've got past the first round of pit stops, everything's settled, and maybe that's the time that you go and, we're British, so maybe we go and make a cup of tea, or we have a little snooze on the sofa in the afternoon, maybe something like that. And then you kind of wake up back around the second round of pit stops, and then that's where the action starts to come in. And so, but Baku, you couldn't take your eyes off. I mean, no matter, something happened every single step of the way. It really it engaged you as a viewer.
Yeah, and for the American audience, we have NBC Sports Network, so they're in a booth watching the feed, so they don't really have any control over the feed or anything, and they're watching it as we're watching it, and they're just commentating on it, but they're not there; they're here,
Yeah.
with Lee Diffie and I can't remember all the names, but Missy, can you?
No.
Yeah, see, I think it's a Lee Diffie match it. I believe the one guy's name is where his glasses are all the way at the end of his nose. but he did a few IndyCar races last year, I remember, and he was just like having the time of his life. Like he was screaming and yelling and hollering because I never heard him like that before because he normally does F1 races. So, he's normally complaining half the time. But and like I said, I always watch the starts because there's something about a standing start with those lights going out, and somebody in the back of the grid going with the green flag or whatever, and all the cars starting at once. I wish on my ride to work everybody would do that at a green light. So I could get through it instead of sitting there 5 turns of it. But hey, we're not all F1 drivers. So, but it's just and there's all like every track they make sure it's a tight first turn. It just seems like a tight right or a tight left, like Coda. I mean, Coda's even like more dramatic. Of course, we have to be more dramatic with an uphill left, right, or left turn instead of a right turn. It seems so, but anyways. It's just
But yeah, I mean, they hit with the first corners. They've started to hit the formula now, really, really well in some of the tracks that have come around in the last few seasons. And it's not about having a wide track at entry; it's about having a wider track at exit. And that's what's really interesting is that allowing the track to widen after the apex rather than going into it. I'm not talking about having a funnel technique going into the first corner. The first corner can be wide, but as you come out of the corner, it's about allowing that extra width so that if you've got on the outside of someone going into the first corner, you're not suddenly running out of road and you're not having to hit your brakes. And I mean, we saw it. It still happened at Baku when we had the 2 Toro Rossos. And one of them had to swerve to get out of the way. The other one, he went onto the green section of the track, back wheel went, spun around. But Baku still has, for a street circuit, a fairly wide exit. But you look at the circuit of the Americas down in Texas, and look at how wide the exit of that first corner is. And again, that's going uphill. And at the apex of the corner is when you then start to come downhill. And I think they're now starting to get the tracks right that allows for a lot of exciting but safe action going into the first corners.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something else. I'm pretty sure it was Max Verstappen in Canada. I don't know how he fit in between those two. I believe it was both Mercedes that he fit in right between. Like between. You couldn't fit a piece of paper in between the two of them or all 3 cars with Max, where he put that car. I could not believe he made that. And then all of a sudden, you just see I think it was Massa just kind of flying by turn 2 and into the wall.
coming into turn 3, wasn't it?
Yeah, 3. That's what it was.
Got collected by science. But but I think that the most amazing thing from Verstappen in that first corner is you're absolutely right. He managed to fit perfectly in between those 2 cars. But look how far back he came from. Yeah. He came like he had a rocket attached to the back of his car. And it's just suddenly out of nowhere. He must have hit the start perfectly, hit his bike perfectly, cycled the gears, avoided the wheel spin, picked up really quick. Everything was a perfect storm. And I just remember sitting and watching it and going, where the hell did he come from? Yeah. Where did he come from? He came from so far down. And then suddenly he's there. And he's so skillful that he looks like he belongs there. And then, to see him have the luck that he's had over the last few races and in Baku as well, it's been quite hard for the chap.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what. I gained a lot of respect for his driving talent right there. I'll tell you what. And like you said, a lot of bad luck for him. And the same thing for a lot of drivers in IndyCar this season too. So, but I mean, that was just Missy. You remember that? I could not believe he fit that car in there. Wow. Yeah. But okay, back to Baku. Okay, with the, Is that medieval castle looking turn? Is that a real medieval castle looking castle, or is that just like a new like castle or whatever?
No, that's
original?
that's a real, that's because it's actually it's part of a city wall, I believe. I understand, because if you look at the aerial angle that they have over it, if you look at it from the front and you're down on the ground and your ground level, and you look at the front of it, it looks like a proper castle. It would looks like it would be the fascia of a building, and that behind it, you walk through that wall and you're walking into a building. But actually, when you look at the over sort of aerial view of it, what you see is that it's kind of like a wall. But there's a tower there. I think they called something like the Maiden's Tower or something like that as well. And this stuff is hundreds and hundreds of years old, and they've managed to fit a sharp left right whilst going up elevation. And I mean, I remember last year we talked about the upcoming race on the NRF1 podcast. And one of the things I said I was looking forward to, what was I looking forward to at the weekend, was seeing the cars going through that section, driving through the old town. Didn't it look great? You've got these wonderful examples of cutting edge technology, and that's set against this background of this, medieval old history. And it just, regardless of whether it's exciting on track, it looks great. And then the race turned out to not be exciting on track, and suddenly having history against, modern day technology wasn't enough for me. And I sat there thinking, actually, yeah, it looked great, but I would really have rather had something on track. I don't know. They didn't make any major changes to the track this year. They put a couple of bumps in maybe, but I mean, it delivered. Somehow it delivered.
I personally, I think Ferrari finally catching up to Mercedes maybe falling back to Ferrari. I don't know which is which. I really don't. I mean, Red Bull always sort of kind of being there and sort of not. Toro Rosso showing some speed, and then they're gone. And then all of a sudden, I mean, even Fernando Alonso got a point. I mean, like, this race had everything.
Yeah.
I mean, even
teammates clattering into each other, didn't it, as well?
Yeah.
With the Force Indias. I mean, Force India, you just want to get them and just shake them, because they could have brought home, multiple podium positions in 2 races in a row if they hadn't, messed around with each other, got in each other's way, clouted into each other. You just think, guys. And this is where, and you mentioned Ferrari and Mercedes, and that they're starting to catch up with each other or fall back to each other. But the difference between those, you got those big 3-4 teams that are always used to being at the front of the grid, is Force India don't know how to win, because they've never really done it. I mean, 1 or 2 successful races here or there is nothing compared to the culture of success that you see that's invested in Ferrari and in Mercedes, and the history behind those teams. A team like Force India, when they get to the front row, they get to the first sort of top 5, top 4 places, they don't know how to hold it. They don't know how to stay there, because there isn't a culture of, guys, act like you've been here before. Act like you've actually, been in 3rd place, been in 2nd place, been fighting for the actual, not, that's track position. That's not pit stops waiting for them to shake out. You're there. You're in those positions. You've got a sniff at a podium. Don't chuck it down the inside, hit a bump, and smash your teammate into a wall. Just learn how to be calm about it. I mean, Lance Stroll's perfect example of that in Bucket.
Lance Stroll, another thing to talk about. I mean, everybody's been killing this kid. We had Sean Rahal on, Missy, about two months ago almost now. And, we mentioned it that, his dad wrote out an $80 million check, and there you go. And he's like, that's actually not true. And we went, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, his dad didn't write a check. That's just a rumor. That's false. He goes, I got a ride once, and there was a rumor about me getting, my dad writing a check, and we're poor as hell. He's like, my dad never wrote a check. It was just a rumor that was started. Lance Stroll's dad didn't write a check, and I'm like, well, okay, that's. But
I mean, he did say it was all sponsors, but I think his dad got all the sponsors per se. So I guess in a way he did, but in a roundabout way, it's a sponsorship. Yeah. It's not like his dad wrote $80 million out from his personal bank account and said, "Here you go."
But that's what everybody comes to. That's what came out.
Yeah, that's the conclusion. Yeah.
So,
But I was happy for him. I mean, it was nice to see somebody different on the podium, because it gets boring seeing, Vettel, Hamilton, or even Bottas or Raikkonen switching out for third place all the time. I've enjoyed seeing, I actually like seeing Daniel Ricciardo on the podium. I've actually think I've become a Daniel Ricciardo fan in the last year and a half. I mean,
now if you listen
so
to NRF1, it's Ricciardo, I think.
Ricciardo.
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 But, Missy, does that mean that you weren't a Daniel Ricciardo fan before then? Does that mean
I personally didn't have a favorite F1 driver. I really didn't. Right. I watched it, I didn't really root for anybody, but it was just, I don't know, it's something about his personality, and he's not a Mercedes or a Ferrari, pretty much. So I've enjoyed seeing him, and his little shoey thing. It's so disgusting. Oh my God, I can't. Like, it's just amazing to me who he gets to drink out of his shoe each week, and I feel I want to watch it because I want to see who he's going to get this week to drink out of his shoe. It's just like,
it's card by now already. He's had, I mean, just name the celebrities. I mean, I'm waiting for William Shatner to get up there next.
that would be worth watching. I mean, yeah, you're right. But the thing is with Daniel, he's so engaging as a person, and every time you see him, he's always got this big smile. Exactly. He's always willing to talk. He's willing to engage. He's one of those people that understands that Formula One, as much as it is about what happens on the track, it's a business and it's a circus, and you have to be able to play up to that circus. That doesn't mean that you have to be sullen and grumpy like Kimi Räikkönen. He's an engaging person. God. People care about Kimi. But Kimi has this, attitude of, sometimes he's absolutely terrible in interviews, whereas Daniel gives you a lot more than Kimi does.
Yes.
Kimi, what? He got the pole, and he looked mad about it. Like, how do you get a pole and you look mad, Kimi? And I think it was Sochi. He missed the pole by like thousandths of a second to Vettel, right? I think. I could be wrong. Am I right on this one?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, all I know is Kimi was second, and I took a picture, and I'm like, this is Kimi being happy about starting on the front row one, and he's just grumpy, and he's looking at Vettel like with this big smile, and it's just, and I remember taking a picture of him and posted it up. It people liked it, but. That I've never seen that man happy ever.
No, and this is a long-standing joke, sort of between myself and a couple of my friends who I watch the race with. And anytime Kimi's on the podium, we know full stop. If he's not on the top step, what he'll do is, and you guys can watch this for yourself in the next race. If Kimi's on the podium at the end of the race, they'll give him the trophy. It will be the trophy up in one hand, a thumbs up with the other hand, and no smile, and that's all he'll do. That's it. You'll give him the trophy. He won't even be happy that he's got a trophy. He'll just be, trophy in the air, thumbs up, and that's Kimi Räikkönen done. That's his podium. That's what he does. You check that out for yourselves next time there's a race and he's on the podium. You look for that. But it is, but I do think there's an element of the guy's a racer, and racers shouldn't be happy.
You got to respect
unless they
that.
are on the front, P1 in qualifying, P1 top step of the podium in the race. And if they're not, and if all he's done is won the race, but someone else has got fastest lap, he'll be grumpy about that. And if all he did is win the race, but he only won the race by 3 seconds, he'll be grumpy that he didn't win it by 5. He is always looking for the way to improve and be better and better and better. And I have to say, if you go back and listen to sort of the end of last season and the very beginning of this season, I think our preview podcast that we did of the F1 season, I've been very critical of Kimi Räikkönen, and I've very much said, look, Kimi, your time is done in a top flight team. Either you need to step away from the Ferraris of the world and go into maybe a middle tier team to start bringing through the kind of the way we're looking at, where the setup we've got at Williams at the moment, where you've got your proven driver in Massa and you've got then your young driver who can develop. So, Massa's going to be good for points in the race, and your young driver could potentially become your leader in the future. That's where he needs to go and mentor. He needs to start giving back to the sport. And if that's not what you want to do, Kimi, then you need to get gone. I firmly have. I've done a complete 180 on that now, and I actually believe Kimi Räikkönen has something still to offer to Formula One at the top level, and that's just because they've finally given him a car that can perform.
Well, and it's funny that you say that, because when they re-signed him, and I was shocked that they re-signed him, but when they re-signed him, I was like, you know why they re-signed him? Because Vettel will not stay on a team where he's not the top dog and he's not, outperforming his teammate. Ricardo comes over to Red Bull and starts outperforming Vettel almost every other race, and Vettel gets really pissed about it, and he leaves. Everything that Red Bull did for Vettel, 4 championships, brought him up from the lower ranks right through their system, and as soon as they bring another guy that's just as good or a little better, because he's new, he's happy, he's excited, he's competitive, Vettel just bails and goes to Ferrari, and it's almost like, I think Ferrari kept Kimi so to keep Vettel happy that he's still the top dog. that's almost how I looked at it.
But that tells you something, doesn't it, Frank? That you're talking about someone saying you're keeping this driver so that your top driver Vettel feels like he's still top driver. You're talking about a former world champion. You're talking about Kimi Räikkönen is a former world champion, and also a former race winner over multiple classes of motorsport. And yet that's the person that you're saying, yeah, you can come and play second fiddle to our driver. I actually think that Kimi Räikkönen is now pushing Vettel hard enough this season that this might be his last season in Ferrari. Because you're saying the right thing is actually, hang on a minute. Vettel's still clearly the number one driver there. He's championship leader. He's the one winning races. He is their number one driver. I have no doubt about that. But actually, is Kimi a little bit too close to snapping on his heels? And what would happen there?
And you know what, he really is. And I mean, not for nothing, but the one guy on track during the whole race that did not act like a championship number one top dog driver was Vettel. I'm sorry.
Oh yes.
I'm sorry. You don't do what he did. You do not do that. You're taught,
I agree.
You're taught that the first time you sit in a cart when you're 3. If you get mad at somebody, you do not use this thing as a weapon against them. Give them the wanker sign, give them the finger, shake your head, yell at your engineer, do something. You don't turn your wheel into them. That's the last thing you do.
I'm with you 100% on that, and it's not just about the danger, and there's been a lot made of this, and I've read a lot of different opinions, and I've heard a lot of different opinions about it as well. And I think I heard someone say, yeah, but they were going so slowly that there was no chance he was ever going to cause, serious injury. And I was like, yeah, but it's not about the injury. It's about causing damage to the other person's vehicle as much as anything else. So you're the front of that pack. You've just backed that pack up so that the safety car can get pulled in so that you can then go racing again. Vettel wants to pull alongside Hamilton and smack into him. Now, if Hamilton smacks into the wall or veers back into Vettel, you've then got a whole train of cars that are going to go bang, 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 and you're going to have a massive fender bender. They're all going to knock into each other.
Unless
that's dangerous.
Well, but that wouldn't happen if they had the audible flying system.
Well, very true. But what annoyed me about it is Vettel's consistent denial to acknowledge that he'd done something wrong. I mean, there's a wonderful interview where Rachel from Sky Sports is walking alongside Vettel after the race and saying to him, you were penalised for dangerous driving, and he says, what driving did I do that was dangerous? And she talks about the move that you made on Hamilton, and he says, yeah, well, Hamilton had to go into the pits for his headrest. That's when I made the move on him. And you just think, actually, you're not acknowledging that you've done something wrong. And I think that's where my issue comes from. It is everyone loses their head at some point during something that's passionate, that you have to. I mean, you have 2 types of Formula One driver. You have the driver that runs on passion and energy and enthusiasm, and that's, they're the guys that drag that. They're your Fernando Alonso's. They're the guys that use their heart and soul to drag the car around the track at a successful rate. Oh, yeah. And then you've got your people that are your scientists. They're your thinkers. They're your calm, your cools. That's your Vettels, your Schumacher, your Alain Prosts. You go back that far. So they're the guys that are calm and cool and collected guys. So to see Seb do, something like that. We've heard him be verbal before. We've heard him have a bit of a rant before and swear at Charlie Whiting before.
I mean,
but to actually see him lose his cool in the car physically was very surprising. So the fact that he's come out and not put his hand up and gone, guys, I lost my cool. I should never have done that. I don't condone anyone doing that. That's the wrong thing to do.
And that's
the fact he hasn't done that makes it worse.
It really does. And that's exactly where I'm going with it, because like you were saying earlier, it starts at the top and works its way down. Now, kids are going to look at that. Young racers coming up, they're going to look at that, and they're going to emulate that because their favorite driver just did that. I mean, and Vettel is let's face it, the two most popular drivers in the sport is Hamilton and Vettel, and you just seen, so you have one fan base freaking out that Vettel just smacked into my guy, and then you got another fan base going, hey, he good for him because he shouldn't have done what he did. And it's just like, no, that's not what you should take away from this. You should take away Vettel should be out there saying, what I did, you should never do. I lost my cool. You're absolutely right.
And do you know what the real kicker on that is? Is that natural justice failed on that day because Vettel actually finished ahead of Hamilton. Now, that to me is where this has all fallen down, because what it shows, as you say, it shows the young racers, the kids who are just getting into their karts. It shows those people that actually doesn't matter if you do smash into someone, because chances are it'll all work out in your favor anyway. That's not the message that needs to be conveyed, and that's what worries me. So, how Vettel would have got his stop go, that's absolutely fine, but Hamilton still lost out because of his headrest. Now, and I absolutely get that there is nothing the FIA or the governing body or the race stewards can do to say, no, Vettel, you need to wait longer because Hamilton's had an issue. That headrest issue, nothing to do with what Vettel did to the car, and I completely believe that. No. But the natural justice of things is, he got punished for doing wrong, but he still came out on top, still increased his championship lead. And that is the element that I think potentially, because the FIA are doing their independent investigations after the race and separate to the race to see whether there's any further sanctions or punishments that need to be imposed. And I think that's where they need to take a long, hard look at the fact that, A, he didn't finish behind Hamilton. Hamilton lost out to Vettel, and Vettel still made, an illegal move against him and still benefited from that. Yeah. And also the fact that he seems to have been unrepentant. Now, if I was assessing this situation about whether any further sanctions were needed, they would be my two areas that I'd be focusing on mainly, I think.
I think I'd take away championship points.
Oh, that's savage, Missy.
I do, because it's totally unacceptable for someone of his stature to, I couldn't even see Lance Stroll doing something like that. You know what I mean? It's just totally unacceptable. And again, he finished ahead of Hamilton. And I don't think a 10-second stop and go, I don't think that was enough. But I do think that, I guess, the rules, that was the maximum punishment I guess they could give. I think they wrote. But it's totally unacceptable. And I think some championship points should be taken away. Because, again, he finished ahead of Vettel or finished ahead of Hamilton, and it just doesn't... It just, I can see his frustration with what happened. I really can, because I don't know what Hamilton was doing. And I'm not a Hamilton fan. I'm really not. And what he did was totally unacceptable also. But I just think that what Vettel did was just way beyond what is acceptable. And I think if you take away I'm not saying take away tons of them, maybe up to 5 maybe, because that'll hurt. And that'll put an example out there. Hey, you can't do that. It doesn't matter how frustrated you are. You can't take your car and hit somebody with it, no matter how fast you're going. Period.
Yeah, I
intentionally. That would get his attention. Like, hey, you might not want to admit what you did was wrong, but we're going to take away some championship points, and then you're going to see it was wrong. You shouldn't have did it. Period.
Yeah, because I do think I agree with you to some extent on that, because there's two things that we need to look at here. Is we need to look at, one, is the driver being appropriately admonished and punished for what they've done, and even if that's just 3 people sat in a room with no chance of the outside world ever knowing what went on in that room, that driver still needs to be punished in that room. Okay, that needs to be done, because that driver has done something wrong. There's cause and effect. There's action. There's consequence. But then there's the image side of it of how have you damaged the sport? Now, if you look at across, especially if you look at something like the NFL, you have your player conduct policies, and you have the players have a responsibility to not do anything that brings into disrepute the league that they work for. And actually, if you look at most employed people who have jobs, somewhere in their contract will be a statement to say you do not bring your employer's reputation into disrepute.
Oh,
now
you can get fired for tweeting something bad about your company.
You absolutely can. You absolutely can. And in professional sports, where the public perception of your organization equates to your income, if you're damaging that, you're damaging the income, and you're causing loss to your company that you work for. So there's the punishment side of it for the individual for what have they done that needs to be looked at. But there's also the side of things of actually, how have you damaged our organization? And by doing so, how have you damaged the perception of the sport? So I would not be surprised if potentially an outcome of this FIA investigation may be something along the lines of, we'll give you a 10-place grid penalty, but if you come out and you do a statement, or you release, you do an apology, a public apology, and you do a little bit of, glad handing, we'll reduce that to 5 places rather than 10. And I think there may be a little wink nod, because the one thing that Liberty Media don't want to do is they don't want to start making races uncompetitive, because fan engagement and competition are the key aspects of their new world of Formula One. So I think there could be something in the background that's quite very much along the lines of, here's what we're going to do to you to punish you as a driver because you did wrong. But actually, you've got a responsibility to polish up our reputation again. Yeah, and
I you know what? I can't say anything better than that, Missy. Can you? I mean, that's dead on, Perry.
Well, you're very kind, sir.
That's very good.
And I don't even think like a fine would even be appropriate either, because what's a fine to them, really? I mean, it's pennies. Right. It's pennies. Yeah. So it's like nothing. So I just think it just needs to be something that's going to impact, that says, hey, that's unacceptable. You can't do that. That'll get their attention. And like I said, a fine, I don't think would do it. I mean, I could see maybe a 10 grid penalty at the, but still, it's just.
Well, it doesn't just.
I don't know. I guess it's unprecedented, really. I mean, because has somebody done this for you? I mean, so blatantly, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, Maldonado, Pastor Maldonado, and those of you who are familiar with our podcast will know my feelings on Pastor Maldonado. They're not great, shall we say? But he did. I think it was at Spa. He pulled alongside someone and pulled into them. But it wasn't during a race. I think it was after a qualifying session had ended. I think maybe I'm sure it wasn't during a race. I'm sure it was after. And he pulled alongside and gave him pulled into him and gave him a nudge. Now he did he got dragged over the coals for that. He really, really did.
Rightfully
but
so.
To take your point, Missy, about a fine isn't going to mean anything to them. Actually, maybe what we should be doing is we should be looking at what will impact them later on. Maybe we take away one of their engines from their engine allocation.
Ooh.
Maybe we say to them, you've gone ahead and you've tried to damage someone else's race opportunities, so I'm going to damage your race opportunities further down the line. Or maybe you impact
DRS
something
for you
that impacts.
Anymore.
Well, God, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? But also not just that, but impact the team, because I always find that. If you've played any kind of organised sports,
yes,
you notice when say you turn up late to practice, the coach doesn't make you run laps; he makes everyone else run laps, and that hurts the team, and that hurts you far more than any individual punishment that would happen to you. So actually, maybe it's a punishment to Ferrari overall. Now, what that would look like, I don't know, because as you say, a fine to Ferrari is a drop in the ocean, isn't it? But that company has so much money, but. Is there some way that you can overall impact the team? Don't just take away driver championship points. Take away constructor championship points because the team have failed to control their driver. And this isn't the first time. If you remember back to the Multi-21 incident when Vettel was still racing for Red Bull, and you had Mark Webber in front and Vettel behind, and the team said to Vettel, you remain in this formation. Mark's going to win. You're going to come second.
Yep.
And Vettel said Mark's too slow. Vettel took it upon himself to overtake Mark Webber, took the victory away from Mark Webber. And when we talked about that at the time, on the NRF1 podcast, I remember the exact words I used were, no one person is bigger than the team. And the team have failed to control that individual. So actually, it's the team as much as anyone that's at fault. Now, so in this instance, something to sanction onto Ferrari as well as to Vettel, yeah, I would say that would be fair.
Yeah,
I like the Constructor Championship points being taken away. I like that one.
I say suspend them both for Monza. Wouldn't that be something?
I think you'd have an absolute uprising if you did
that'd
that.
Be a riot.
God, wouldn't it? That would be worth watching, from a bunker, because you'd have to make sure you were safe.
I mean, if Liberty Media wants Formula 1 in the headlines, do that one. There you go.
Could you imagine Vettel and Ferrari suspended for Monza? Good Lord.
It would be like
I don't think you get away with it. I don't think you get away with it. But I mean, a lot of people have been talking about Vettel this week, and I mean, some people, Jenson Button has come out and said quite openly, yeah, he did wrong, but we need to move on, and just stop hanging on just that one moment, because then there's an element of truth to that, because the more we talk about it and the more we publicize it, the more people who may not have seen it will go out and look at it up and sort of see it online and look at it on the internet. And maybe they're then the kind of people who would go, as you say, your young drivers, your young racers who are in karting and lower formulas will look at that and go, actually, yeah, the more we talk about it, the more we validate it. So maybe it is time to just move on from it.
Yeah, and not for nothing, but Hamilton, whenever Hamilton is behind a pace car, he is always complaining that the pace car is not going fast enough. I'm losing tire pressure. The pace car driver, when Hamilton's in the lead, must be just like, oh my God, this is a yellow. Just do it. How fast can this car go?
I did look into rules, because I've been trying to look into rules, and they put the basic bullet points on their website, but then they take you to, if you want to look at more regulations, they take you to this other thing, which is even more confusing. But they did say that the pace car, it's the FIA sets the minimum speed, I think, for the pace car. So, but they don't say what that speed is.
They
just say that the FIA dictates what that speed the pace car must maintain is.
Yeah, and I think it's dictated by the track that they're on.
And I would assume, as well.
Yeah.
Like if it's wet.
Yeah, and they will have that. They'll have that set up before they get to the track. They'll know in there. They'll have their notes. When they turn up, the race control will say, okay, for Baku, the race car, the pace car drives at the X speed. And I think if you look really close, and I don't know this is just me sort of guessing here, bit of guesswork, but I would say if you looked really closely at those rules and regulations, it would say that number can't be changed on the fly. So I would say that if we set the race pace, or the race, the safety car pace at X for Baku, halfway through that race, when you've got Hamilton on the radio going, Charlie, this car's too slow, you need to speed this car up, there's probably regulations in place to stop race control saying, okay, you now go to X plus 5, X plus 10. What they'll do is they'll get away from the race and they'll go, okay, guys, what was the pace car like for us this weekend? Okay, we generally got the feel it was slow. Right, when we come back here next year, we're going to be making the pace car drive at Y miles an hour instead of X miles an hour. And they'll take that on board. But I think you'll find with all the variables and the things that happen over a Formula One weekend, I think that changing the pace of the pace car on the fly, I think would probably almost be prohibited in the rules. But I'm happy to be proven wrong on that. I don't know that. I haven't looked into that, but you get the feeling with the way things work that they're not going to suddenly go, oh, by the way, teams, we're now going at this speed. Because a lower pace car speed might be working great for Williams. And Williams will then go, well, hang on. You're now pandering to the lead car. That's not parity. That's not fair. Right. So I think there's going to be things in there that will limit their ability to change that.
And that's another thing that's different from like the European way of racing to the American way of racing, where the leader dictates pretty much the speed of everything, and and he's earned that right because he's in the lead, and that's kind of the thinking here, where it's a little bit different over there, but there's a lot of things a little bit different. We have blocking where you cannot make a defensive move here, but in F1 you can, but you can't make two defensive moves, and that's blocking.
No, you can't weave. That's really what they're looking for. So when people go, hang on a minute, he moved over to the right to cover the outside, and he then moved back. That's two moves. You go, well, hang on a minute. He's made two moves. He's moved once to defend. he's then moved back to the racing line. You are allowed to move back to the racing line, and most of the time that would mean moving back to the apex of the corner.
Right.
But you have to leave that car's width if there is a car alongside you. But then where does it count that a car's alongside? Is that my front wheel is level with your rear wheel? Am I alongside you? Does my front wheel have to be level with your front wheel? Does that count as being alongside me? Or could my front wheel be level with your side pod? Because if you think about the length of a Formula One car, if my front wheel is level with your side pod, my nose and my front wing is going to be level with your front wheel. I'm pretty much alongside you.
Yeah.
You know, so, but where does that stand? So I don't even think the drivers have full clarity on it. And I think the really skillful drivers are the drivers that you see who, you know, I'll allow you the space, and then I know the track is switching back to the other side. So technically I have the inside line, and it's the drivers that are able to think 2 or 3 or 4 corners ahead whilst still being in the moment of the corner that they're going into. Yep. And your people like, I mean, I know I've mentioned him already on not just during our conversation, but your people like your Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso has an incredible Formula One and IQ. He really knows. He knows his race in and out. He knows who he's racing, when he's racing them. Racecraft, exactly right. That's exactly what we're talking about.
Yep. And I'll tell you what. Parker Thompson, 3 years ago, his first year in USF 2000, he raced for JDC race, JDC Racing,
Motorsports.
Right, exactly. We were at Mid Ohio, and I watched him set up a pass that he pulled off, that he set up 3 turns before, and I watched it and I said, either he got lucky or he did that on purpose. And I really want to find out, because if he did that on purpose, that was really great racecraft for his level. So I went and I found him, and I asked him about it. I said, did you set that up at turn whatever and make the pass? And, you know, did you do that on purpose, or did you just get lucky? And he looked at me, he goes, you caught that? And I'm like, yeah, I saw that. That was great. Like, you pulled that off. And we've been friends with Parker Thompson ever since. And Parker's a very, very talented driver. I mean, he won all 5 F1600 races in Canada for some big racing event that they had. He's been top 5ing in USF this year, every race. So I mean, he's got miles and miles of talent. But you know, and it's drivers like that have the racecraft, that can think ahead. You know, 3-4 turns ahead and make the pass, or at least try to do that. Like they're the ones that, you know, really stick out, and they're the ones that become the legends, like the Fernando Alonso's, like you were just saying. So
and Max Verstappen is a great example of racecraft, and I think that's why people are so surprised by him, because he's developed such good racecraft at such a young age. But that is what you're seeing with him as well. When you say, how did he fit that car in between those 2 cars? You know, launching from 4 rows back or whatever he was in Canada. How's he managed to do that? And some of the moves that he's managed to pull off that have made him so exciting to watch, it's all a racecraft that he somehow has developed in the lower formulas, and has just been that little bit quicker at adapting to Formula One than maybe someone else that's come through at a similar age. Someone like your Lance Strolls.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest with you, I really do think that, you know, the junior formulas, you know, like there's a lot of junior formulas, like, you know, GP2 and, you know, your F4s, your F3s. Congratulations on your F3 car, by the way.
With the, that was wonderful.
Sponsorship. Yep.
Yeah.
We actually sponsored a car too. Our buddy Billy Lehman in a Legends car. So we sponsored a car the same time you guys sponsored a car.
Well, congratulations to you as well.
Oh, thank you. I don't know how Billy's first race went. I think it was
he finished 7th.
7th. Well, there you go.
Yes, he finished 7th.
But your car won, didn't it?
It did. There were a number of different races that were going, and I think they won one of them. 3rd in another one, maybe. But yeah, it was fantastic to see our logo on an actual race car, because I don't think we ever envisioned that it would be that when Mike and I first started this podcast.
We thought the same
and
thing.
It was just the 2 of us. Yeah. You never realize it's going to blow up to be the way that it is, and we just really love doing it. We love the fact that people listen to it, and I'm very much the same as yourselves from what we've talked about. You know, we love the fact that people engage with it, and we love the fact that people want to talk to it, and people let's get this clear. We never went out looking for people to say, hey, can you put us on a race car? This was someone who listened to the podcast, had engaged with us, had spoken with us through our social media channels, and then said, by the way, guys, would you like to be on a race car? And we said, absolutely, we'd love to be on a race car, because that's what it's all about. It's all about racing.
Yeah, we jumped at it, and it was basically, if we didn't do it, he wasn't racing this year. So we were happy to do it because we got a driver in a seat racing this year, and that's what it's all about. So we were really happy to give back, and Billy's been a huge just supporter of us. I remember, what was it, Missy? Last year, we basically turned him into our Indy 500 correspondent because he was there, and we weren't. That's pretty much all it was. But he's actually going to Ball State College for to be like a news anchor, So
okay.
So he's got a great voice. He can talk very well, and he comes on the show a lot. So it's really nice to give back, and we love giving back to the listeners and doing everything we can. We love talking to them and meeting them at the tracks. It's awesome meeting them at the tracks. I mean, it's just really cool. So and when you guys had your logo on the side of it in a free car, I'm like, that's so awesome. It really is.
Yeah, it was really good for us. We really enjoyed it.
That's great. Excuse me. So
well, I had two questions about this race. Let's
get back to Buffalo. Yeah, she has
because when the red flag came out and everybody came into the pits, so these are my two questions, because the one was two cars got penalized. I think it was Raikkonen and maybe Perez, I think it was. They were penalized for working on their car in the garage. But I'm a little confused on this because I don't understand. I guess I don't understand what the difference is, because you're allowed to work on your car on during a red flag in pit lane. So I don't understand what the difference is if it's in the garage or on pit lane. Like what? So, you're still allowed to work on it. So. But
here's the real kicker: is that if it hadn't been red flagged, they'd have been able to take their car into the garage, work on their car, and put their car back out.
Really?
I think, because the race is still going on, and while you're trying to put a new floor on Raikkonen's car, the other cars have done 5-6 laps, so you're never going to get anything out of it. But if the race is red flagged, those cars aren't going anywhere. You're not counting up the laps. You are working. So it's about parity. It's about competitive advantage. So if I take my car, you and I are both racing in a race. It gets red flagged. You have to bring all of your gear and everything that you want to work on the car out into the pit lane, so everyone can see what you're doing. They can see the changes you're making. They can then try and make counter changes to their own car. You're not working in an environment where all your electrics are, all of your equipment. Everything has to be brought out to you, and it's an inconvenience. I take my car into my garage. I've got everything at my fingertips. I know where everything is. I've got an enclosed space where I can make slight changes if I want to and gain a competitive advantage. So I think it's mainly just
compared to doing that on the Autobahn on the side of the road.
Yeah,
There you
exactly.
go. That's
I know they said if they were in the garage already before the red flag came out, it would have been fine.
Well, they
so
were,
which is I guess is where but I guess they weren't. I guess they came in with everybody else and took their car into the garage. So I guess, but I just was
no. You're quite right. They had so to my understanding was Raikkonen and Perez had both retired from the race. That's what their engineers said to them. You are retired from the race, and they came in before the red flag happened. But as soon as the red flag happened, those teams went, right, we're not missing out now. We're not missing out because the cars aren't doing laps. So instead of being 10 laps down, we're only going to be 3 laps down, and we can probably make that back up. So let's get working. We've got the time now to get working. The FIA say, no, you're gaining some form of competitive advantage over the other cars that are not pulled into their garages. So if there hadn't been a red flag, Raikkonen and Perez would have remained retired. There's no way that those teams would have been able to do a turnaround on those vehicles and get them back out to something where it had a meaningful finish. They'd have been 10, 11, 12 laps down.
That makes more sense.
But when the red flag came out and they brought all the other cars in, it's kind of like the Ferrari and Force India kind of just went, hang on a minute, guys. We can now jump on this bandwagon. We can use this to our advantage, and we haven't lost out as much as we would have done otherwise. And the FIA have said, no. But here's the real kicker, right? It's not because they were working on their cars in the pit, in the garage. It's because they were working on their cars in the garage without permission. So if they had gone to the FIA and said, guys, the floor on Raikkonen's car is absolutely screwed. can we change it? But we need to change it in the garage because we can't do it in the pit lane. And the FIA had said, yes, of course you can. They're not going to get penalised for that.
Would the
but
FIA
they didn't
have
do
done
that? Who knows? I don't know how they would work.
FIA, I doubt it.
But that's the thing. It's about the fact that you didn't ask. You just went ahead and did. And you could have effectively gained a competitive advantage from doing that.
That makes more sense. But then here's my second question to follow up to that. So those two cars were allowed onto the racetrack before all the other ones were, after the red flag, which was where my confusion came in. Why were they allowed back on track to, I guess, pick up a lap or gain a lap? Because they were like, I think, because the one that sticks out is Perez. He was 2 laps down, I believe, because he was asking, will I get both my lap back? And they said, no, you only get one back. So I guess my confusion there was, why were they allowed back onto the track to gain a lap back after the red flag before everybody else? Which I was a little confused. I don't understand what rule that would have been to allow them back on before everybody else right after the red flag.
I'm not going to be able to tell you the rule as to what it is in terms of what regulation it is, but I know that it's going to sit in the same area as when they allow lapped cars to unlap themselves behind a safety car. So it's about allowing. So I don't know the rationale behind it from the FIA, but I would assume it's along the lines of getting those cars out of the way. So if a lapped car is sitting, let's say a lapped car is sitting between P7 and P8, okay? If you let that lapped car unlap itself, it goes round, it joins the back of the track or the back of the pack. It's going to then take a little bit longer for P1 to catch up to that vehicle. And so it becomes less of an obstruction. Why they allow cars to do it in the pit lane, I don't know. What I would suggest is actually, if you've been working on your car and you're going to rejoin the race, put it on a dolly, shift it to the back of the pack and let it join at the back of the pack. But maybe the answer to that is because when those cars are brought in, they're brought in race formation. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're brought in their running order. Their race formation is you've got P1, P2, P3. You then may have a lapped car in between P8 and P9. So you've got P8, lapped car, P9. Maybe those are the lapped cars that they should be letting go round so that when you restart the race, you allow people to go racing and you don't have lapped cars becoming obstructions. Yeah. But the reasoning, I mean, even if you listen to some of the professional F1 pundits, people like Martin Brundle and David Croft, who do the commentary for Sky Sports, over in the UK, even they sometimes remain confused about why lapped cars should be allowed and why they shouldn't be allowed, and they even argue about whether or not blue flags should be used. Yeah,
I think it wasn't even addressed on the broadcast we were watching. I was just like, well, why are they allowed back out on track and everybody else is still sitting on pit lane? I'm like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we're still sitting here wondering how in the world Pagenaud won Phoenix the way he did. And that was ridiculous too. I mean, it's just one of those rules where it's like it's so deep into the rule book that it almost becomes almost a racing steward or a race controls authority having jurisdiction moment. Okay, just let them go because they're going to be in the way anyway, and I don't want them in the way of.
I don't want them in the way, so let them get out of the way.
Exactly.
And also, it's competitive. It's competitive, isn't it? It's about competition. So look at someone like Bottas. Now, if Bottas, as a lapped car who was so far down after lap 1, had not been allowed during that safety car process to unlap himself, potentially. As an example, I'm not saying that that's what happened during his race, but you look at someone like Bottas, who is by rights a front runner, and a podium sitter.
Yeah.
But for some reason, he got into a clout, he went off, he had a spin, whatever. He's now sitting really far back. If there's a safety car, you could allow that car to unlap itself. Suddenly, that car becomes a factor and becomes really, really exciting to watch and has a competitive influence on the outcome of the race. Whereas if he's not allowed to unlap himself during safety car, he's stuck where he is. He's got the competitive speed, so he can get round those cars. So if he's not allowed to do that during a safety car, you've then got this car that, say he is, as I've said before, say he's stuck between P8 and P9. P9, if you're a car running in P9, what's the chances that you can overtake a Mercedes on a straight? They're not great.
Zero.
That Mercedes, yeah, exactly. That, and especially with someone like Bottas driving it, he's a great driver.
Yeah.
So you're actually allowing that car to remain in the way. Plus, you're denying the competitive element and the exciting element of watching that car carve its way through the backfield for position at that point.
Interesting. Very interesting. Makes sense.
Well, I thought that was interesting with Bottas too, because I felt that when Hamilton slowed up quite significantly, I thought he was trying to help Bottas catch up, get his lap back at the end of the field.
That's the other thing I want to talk about in this race. I couldn't believe this was even brought up. Missy, do you want to go with this one? What Hamilton asked?
Oh yeah,
I can't believe I can't.
I know of all people
to
ask something like that, but yeah, I guess at one point when Bottas was in third, I believe it was, trying to catch up, he had asked his team if Bottas isn't racing for a position, I think he put it, can he slow up a bit to hold up Vettel so I can catch up to Vettel?
Yeah.
I believe it is. I don't think that's the exact wording, but that's what it came out to be. And I was just like, wait, what?
I think you're far off, Missy. I think that's very close to what he said. Now, I will maybe I will surprise you here.
Be very careful what she's just saying. So she gets it right.
I think I'm going to surprise you here and say that I'm not shocked that Hamilton said that. And if I'm honest, potentially the team now has to look at what's best for them constructor, what's best for them racer. Now, how much of a difference would it have made to Hamilton's gap between himself and Vettel if he had finished one place ahead of Vettel instead of one place behind Vettel? He would have been 10 points instead of 15 points difference, right? I think that's where we're looking, something like that.
Right. And see, and just to break in there, that's where the mindset of what we're used to and what the European racers are used to. See, because we're not really used to a manufacturer championship. We really don't care. We're more driver versus driver here. A lot of spec series. A lot of spec series are for juniors, but our top class of IndyCar, you can almost call it spec, but there is two different engines. Two different aero kits, but that's going away. Next year, the car is going to be even more spec looking because they're all going to look the same. But that's just basically enticing more engine manufacturers to come over. There's a lot more to that we've talked about before. But my point being is, I think it looks very odd to us when we see it, and it doesn't look too odd to you when you see it because you're used to seeing it, and you have a different mindset of what you're seeing. You're seeing two drivers. You're seeing two Mercedes cars. Yeah. You're not seeing Bottas and Hamilton, whereas when we're watching it, we're seeing Bottas and Hamilton. We're not seeing two Mercedes cars. That's like second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I come in where I think in the past I've heard, Hamilton say, well, if he's faster than me, he can pass me. So my thought was, well, if you think you're faster than Vettel, then pass him. Why would you need somebody to slow up in front of you to help you out then?
Yeah. But I think you're exactly right, Missy, and that was a point I was just going to make. So you've taken the words out of my mouth there, a bit like Meatloaf. You took the words right out of my mouth. But I think the problem is that Hamilton knew he wasn't fast enough to pass Vettel, and that's why he's asking for help. I think Hamilton knew there was no way he was going to get past Vettel, especially at that late in the race, and that's where you're quite right, actually, Frank. You're spot on. We are aware that whilst there are individuals racing, there is team as well, and that's where the phrase team orders comes in. And if you're a regular F1 watcher, you'll understand what team orders is and are they allowed? And yes, they are, but should they be allowed? And actually, me personally, I have no problem with team orders. It does rob us a little bit of racing, and I understand that. But ultimately, you are talking about millions and millions of pounds, dollars, euros, whatever currency you want to use, that hangs in the balance. And a team saying, you back off, you speed up, you let him past, not only makes the difference between how much money your team makes, but it makes a difference as to where that individual driver stops. Now, if that individual driver finishes successfully, they're going to get sponsorship deals. They're going to get people wanting to come and talk to them. Some of that money is going to fall your way. So you're not just going to, and they're going to go, right, okay, suddenly Mercedes is not just the championship winning team, because as you say, quite rightly, you see two drivers. So Mercedes, quite rightly, not only do they want to win the Constructors' Championship, but they will want one of their drivers to win the World Championship, because you could go back and you could pull any F1 fan, avid or otherwise, sort of even a couch fan aside, and say, who was the Formula One world champion in this year, year 2015 or whatever, and they'll say, oh, it was, Lewis Hamilton, whatever. But if the Constructors' Championship winner was different, they won't know that.
No.
They'll only remember the driver. That's the general feel of it. So I get exactly where you're coming from, but I'm not surprised in any way that Hamilton said, hey, look, if Valtteri's not racing for position, can he help me out? I will say in his defense, because I can understand that there's a level of incredulity in your voice, Missy, about it. But I will point out to say that
I don't even know what that word means.
I guess we're just not used to them working as a team, if you will.
Yeah, Hamilton.
Because we're used to seeing the IndyCar, but not over an F1. F1, it's just like, you got to beat your teammate. That's the only thing that's important. We're not working as a team. Because I've never seen Hamilton work as a team. Like, it feels like every time, for instance, Rosberg asked, for a little help, it was just, he can pass me if he thinks he's faster. Yeah. No, I'm not helping. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things I didn't expect. Or actually, no, I did expect his, I want to say maybe, I don't want to say self-centeredness to think, but I just...
But you're not wrong. You're not wrong with that statement. He's a racer. Mm-hmm. And he is one of the best racers in that formula.
Yeah.
And, if not in the world. And to be that, you have to be self-centered. You have to believe you are the fastest. But not only do you have to believe you're the fastest, you have to believe that you have the right to stand on that podium. You have the right to be the number one guy in that team. I have proven this is Hamilton's mindset. I am a multi-time world champion. I am one of the best drivers in the world. Mercedes went and lured him from McLaren for big, big money.
Oh yeah.
And if he's gonna sit there and go, you're gonna bring me all the way over on that much money to put me in second place or to put me as your number 2 driver behind Bottas? Of course you're not. Bottas needs to work to my advantage. But then he will exactly on the flip side say, when the situation is reversed, yeah, well, he's your number 2 driver. If he wants to get past me, let him get past me. Because he firmly believes that wherever he goes, he's the number 1 guy. Now, a lot of people don't like that about Lewis Hamilton. Personally, I have no problem with it. But then that's Formula One. That's what it is.
And the way you just explained that makes so much more sense now. It really does. I never looked at it like that.
Perfect sense.
Yeah.
I'm just not a Hamilton fan because I just think, he, yes, he's arrogant, he's self-centered, but it's just like, I felt like he was but then again, I felt like both Mercedes drivers were crybabies. Like the past couple of years, it was just like, they were just such crybabies. Like the one that sticks out in my head so much is Rosberg. And when he just said that one, I forget what race it was, but he was like, but that was my corner. And it was just like, what? What do you mean that was your corner? Like, that's all I could think about. That was my corner. It just sounds so whiny. And it's just like, oh. Yeah. God.
Yeah, and I agree with you as well. And the problem is that when you're not challenged externally, you start to look for the things, and it's a sense of entitlement as well. And Mercedes were not being pushed by anyone. I mean, it was runaway. So the only area of focus for those two, for Rosberg and Hamilton in seasons gone by, was each other. They were the only areas that they could look at. Now you've got Hamilton's having to look at not only Bottas, he's having to look at Vettel, he's having to look at Raikkonen, he's having to look at Ricciardo, he's having to look at Verstappen. He all those, and so the little things where maybe Bottas won't slow down to help back someone into him, Hamilton won't fixate on that because there's 7 or 8 other, he's surrounded by enemies. Whereas before it was just him one-on-one with some guy that he would sit and look across the garage at, and had all of his focus on that one person. So they did. They were. Yeah. You're quite right. They were quite whiny because they were used to winning, and now suddenly they're not winning as much. Yeah. So it's I understand.
That's true.
Yeah, and I don't always agree with it. But I understand it.
Now, getting back to the whole Team Wars thing, I just want to go back like a few years when Vettel, totally disregarded it, and the whole Weber thing. Do you think
multi-21? Yeah.
Do you think that one moment was what made Weber go to the WEC and say, "I'm done with F1"?
I don't know if it was that one moment. I do think that Vettel being so far ahead of Mark Webber at Red Bull may have led to that. But here's the thing, and you won't find very many British Formula One fans who don't like Mark Webber. Okay, and especially in Norfolk, Mark has lived in Norfolk, has raced in Norfolk, where we're from. He
Cool.
lives just not too far away from us now.
Right on.
Sort of a couple of hours down the road from where we are now. He lives in that area. So we are big fans of Mark Webber. But I say this very, very openly and honestly. Mark Webber would never have been a world champion. I genuinely believe Mark Webber did not have it in him to be a Formula One world champion. Race winner, absolutely. Very, very fast driver, yes, completely. But I don't believe Mark Webber ever had it in him to be a Formula One world champion. And I think potentially sharing an office space, as it were, with Sebastian Vettel, who had the same car and yet was so much further ahead and a 4-time world champion, I think potential, or 3-time world champion by the time Webber left, I think may have made Mark Webber look and go, if that's the type of quality that's coming through now, my time is done. And it's a grueling schedule. So it's travel around the world from March to November, or there's only 3-4 months off in Formula One, but you're still training in those 3-4 months. You're still in the simulator. You're still at the factory. There is no off season in Formula One, and it is traveling around the world. Your body adjusting to that. When you arrive, get over your jet lag quickly because you got to train right. You got to eat right. You got to be in race shape. It is grueling and exhausting, and that's why they get paid the big money to do it. And
just throwing it out there, Hamilton whined about that too. Just throwing that out there. He has no life because of sound.
But also, you got to bear in mind that these drivers in Formula One now, they have been driving. I mean, Jenson Button retired last year. I mean, I'm sure you guys are aware of that. And came back for Monaco this year. Jenson Button, when he said, I'm going to retire, he basically said, I have done nothing but racing in my life since I was 4 years old. And that's his life.
And now I'm in a car that I will never win in. Why bother?
Yeah, that may have had something to do with it as well. But when you look at someone who is a professional racing driver, they will have been a professional racing driver for a number of years. But the years before that, they would have been an amateur racing driver from the moment that they could understand how to drive a car. And they know nothing else in their life. And so I get what you say, Miss, when he says, I've got no life because of Formula One. Well, yeah, but that's your choice. You choose to work in Formula One. You choose to do a job. And 90% of the time, Lewis Hamilton is going to say positive things about F1. But I think the fact that how much Mark Webber was outperformed by Seb, how the team favoured Sebastian Vettel, and the fact that he walked away with barely a slap on the wrist from that Multi-21 incident, I think was the real catalyst to say, this guy is the golden boy of this team, and I'm never going to overtake him. And I think they were definitely contributing factors to Mark Webber's decision to walk away from Formula One.
So it was more like the straw that broke the camel's back, and pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think there was a real cumulative effect. A lot of things built up, and then this one incident was maybe where Webber went, you know what? I'm never gonna beat this kid consistently, even when I'm given the benefit of the doubt by the team. This kid's going to come in and be this, and I don't want to work in that environment. So potentially that's what would have happened there.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Missy, is there anything else from Baku that you had a question on that you wanted to talk about?
No, those were the whole red flag thing was my main questions.
Yeah, I mean,
I think there were regular F1 fans who watched like every week quite avidly, were probably sitting there scratching their heads as well, Missy. So you're not alone in that front.
Yeah. She was explaining to me, and I was watching. I'm like, I don't, because I tried to, I'm like, I have no idea. It doesn't. Make sense
like I said, I even went onto their website to look through their rule book. You know what I mean? Like I said, they have the major bullet points on there, but then if you click on if you want more, information, they take you to more regulations, but it's just like. It's can't make heads or tails out of it because it's not really clear cut.
They put it like a code book. Good and like good luck deciphering what you're really reading.
Yeah, I mean, at least on their website they have it broken down into different different little categories. Like I could try and figure it out. Like I went under the safety car and suspending a race. Like okay, well maybe it'd be under there because it was red flagged and but no. So
Perry, the one thing about Formula One that I'm not sure about, because in Indy, it's very clear cut. Indy 500, and then all the other races, right? And all the other races, I mean, you have Road America, that's amazing. Mid Ohio is like, I call it the road course, or like the Indianapolis road course, like almost, because it has like a when you go there, it's got this just this feel to it, like it's alive, right? Like
Yeah.
Indianapolis is, when you go there for the 500, it's a feeling that you cannot explain in words. You can't put it in words. It's like looking at the Grand Canyon. You can't explain it, right? But there's a life force there. In Formula One, I can't pick out a race throughout the season that I'm like, is there a race that everybody has to win, or you're not respected or revered in the sport ever? Because I mean, there's a lot of IndyCar drivers that have won a lot of races but have never won the Indy 500, and it's like they don't even exist. You see what I mean? So what race in F1 would that be?
Ooh, this is going to pain me to say this, because if you listen to our podcast at all around Monaco time, you will know my feelings on the Monaco Grand Prix. I believe Monaco is a gimmick race. I believe it is only on the calendar to entice people in to watch it, because they have not made strides in safety to equal that track. Like, that track hasn't changed in any way to offer up. I mean, it has in some ways, but not hugely, to offer safety to the driver. So I think it's a bit of a gimmick. I think it's deliberately put there to draw people in to see what will happen next. But if you can't win around Monaco, you're not a Formula One driver. You know, you Monaco is the one. Well, Monaco is the one. I mean, that's it. It's tight. It's fast in places. It's awkward. There's not a lot of places to pass. You talk about racecraft. Racecraft is something that the tunnel is fun, and you come bursting out of the tunnel into bright sunshine, and you immediately have to spot a braking zone for a chicane, left, right. That's incredible. But Monaco can sometimes give us fantastic races, but it is the one where a real test of, can a driver keep a car on track, is Monaco. That's to be said, doesn't mean that I like it as a race. The other one that I would say that everyone really kind of wants to win is Spa in Belgium. Spa is such a historic track. It has one of the most iconic corners on the circuit in Eau Rouge. And Spa is a driver's track. I mean, it really is. It's a fast racetrack. It's in the middle of a forest, so it's quite isolated. It's very picturesque, but it's a gorgeous racetrack. Then so I'm giving you a top three here, really, which I know isn't. You asked for one, but
I just want to say Spa is is one of my bucket list tracks to go to in my lifetime at least once. That's one of
mine too. It's where I'm definitely going to go and watch a race at Spa. But the other point I would make is to put a little bit of a caveat on your question of, is there one race that you have to win? If you're British, you have to win at Silverstone. Right. Silverstone is one of the oldest Grand Prix on the circuit, on the calendar, and it's really iconic track, and it's a good track. It's got good opportunities for overtaking. It always provides a good race. But if you're British, you win it, and you have to win at Silverstone. That's the one that matters. That really, really is. And we've had some fantastic British Formula One world champions who have won at Silverstone. And there is no better feeling as a British Formula One fan to see a British driver stand on the top step at Silverstone. And for the drivers as well, you can see that it really does make a difference. But yeah, I would say, the Indy 500, if you don't win the Indy 500, you're not, the creme de la creme, you're not the pinnacle. If you don't win Monaco, you're not the pinnacle of Formula One.
Yeah, and it's just like Missy and I were huge. We try to be as unbiased as possible, but we're still fans. We do this because we love the sport, and we're huge Will Power fans. Personally, that's why I want IndyCar at COTA so bad, because I want to compare. I just want to compare an IndyCar race at COTA to a Formula One race at COTA so bad, because I have no way to compare the two. I know Formula One cars are a lot faster in turns. I know IndyCar cars are a lot faster in a straight line. One's made to do one thing, one's made to do three things. It's just. But COTA is, that's why I'm so pro IndyCar to COTA, and the only reason they're not there is because of another track, owner, organizer, whatever we want to call him. He's threatened to, if they go there, you don't come here. And I don't know why they're so afraid of losing a track, because right now IndyCar is on such a roll. They're holding all the cards now. They didn't used to, but they are now. So I say now it's time to go to COTA. And if Eddie Gossage wants to say no more Texas, well, then we'll go to 10 more tracks that are better than yours. Okay, buddy? So, bye. And we finally get COTA because everybody goes to COTA. I mean, the supercars from Australia go to COTA. WEC goes to COTA. F1 goes to COTA. All the top racing series in the world go to COTA, except for IndyCar, and I don't like it. IndyCar needs to go to COTA. That's my biggest gripe. But what I was really starting out to say is, we're huge Will Power fans, and he hasn't won an Indy 500 yet. Won a championship, won a lot of poles, track records, a lot of race wins, but not a 500 yet. And until he wins a 500, he won't get that top just like legend status. And if he gets that 500, he'll be in that legend status. You kind of see what I'm saying here?
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with you. And then there will be, I mean, there's always examples, and Sebastian Vettel's probably the most recent one, and before him was Michael Schumacher. And people still now, even though Sebastian Vettel is leading the world championship in Formula One, people are always saying he could only ever win races from the front. He could never come through the pack. He could never. So I think to an extent, to be able to show that you can race, you'll be great. But there are certain places you have to win to be able to, and win ugly. Do you get what I mean when I say that? Not scamper away into the
Dario Franchitti,
not have anyone challenge you. Yeah, so that's it. So
Franchitti comes to mind. All of his wins at Indy have finished under yellow. It's so weird to say.
Yeah. So until you can win and in the iconic places, it doesn't matter, whether you come from the middle of the pack and win, or whether until you can win in the iconic places, you're not a legend.
Yeah, and that's why Mario Andretti is the legend of all legends, because he's won everywhere.
Yeah, that's it. But that's why even now, I mean, Graham Hill did they say he's the Triple Crown, didn't he? He did he did Indy 500, Monaco, and Le Mans, I think. And even now, you've got Fernando Alonso leaving Monaco Grand Prix to come and do the Indy 500, because not just in motorsport, but in sport, the Indy 500 is so iconic that it's people who don't follow motorsport know what the Indy 500 is.
Yeah, because
if you can, and if you're the person who wins the Indy 500 and you're associated in any way with F1, suddenly people are going to know who you are.
Yep,
and that's the prestige that's behind it.
I mean, it happens to us all the time. Missy and I will tell people that what we do, or because we go to so many races, and the one great thing that this show has done for us as fans has made us IndyCar media. So when we go to a track, we're not fans, we're media there. So we get we have media credentials and everything. So it's amazing, and that's what the sport has given back. I mean, IndyCar is just so fan friendly, and I think Fernando was really taken back by that. I think that was like the biggest surprise, is just how accessible the drivers are to the fans and everything.
Yeah.
And I think
I love seeing him walk into the stands after, I forget what F1 race it was, right after that he
Canada.
DNF.
Canada.
Was it Canada? I loved seeing him walk into the stands. I really did. I didn't expect it, and I was just like, oh, look at that. He's taking a page out of IndyCar's book.
We all said he was practicing.
Yeah, well, I thought that was quite telling, because he walked into the crowd, took off his gloves, threw his gloves, and I said on the podcast that we recorded to review that race that I actually thought that was quite showing that Fernando was kind of done with this season. That if he'd gone to Baku and they'd been at the back of the pack, or they'd had another DNF or anything like that, that he would have just gone, do you know what, guys, I'm done. I've given you till September, but actually, you're terrible. I'm out. Get someone else in the seat. I don't care. I'm going back to Indy. I'm going to take the rest of the season off, and then I'm going to race in Indy for a year because I love that so much more. But no, hey, they bounced back in Baku, and I have, so much time. And as a British Formula One fan, you can't help but love McLaren. And you hate seeing them struggle at the moment because you remember their glory days. But I do feel for Fernando there. But I like, like you, I love the fact that he was able to just jump up, go in the stands. And I think with Liberty Media taking over control of Formula One, I think we'll start to see, fan access and things like that. I think we'll start to see drivers becoming far more accessible to the fans. I think that's a good thing. I think you have seen
different things, I guess, since Liberty Media has taken over. There's been some things that I've seen that I was just like, wow, you've seen that. Well, yeah.
Since Bernie's been gone. Maybe the iron grip has loosened a bit.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen things on social media that I'm like, wow, I didn't expect that to be posted, because it wouldn't have before,
Yeah. I mean, IndyCar is definitely leading the way of social media and just being, every practice is accessible to social media. It might not be on TV, but you can still watch it, and they have IndyCar radio going during the live streaming, so they're really embracing the social media, and they seem to be the only racing series doing it. I don't see any other racing series really using social media to their benefit like IndyCar is right now. So, I mean, they're just really on a roll, and with the new car coming out next year, I think it's going to be really huge. And I was really, who knows? Maybe it might still happen. I don't know. But Fernando Alonso just being at Barber when we were there, the presser was literally, I was like, this is a historic moment that we're literally sitting in the second row of 2 rows of seats with 200 people standing in a room. And we're watching this presser of Fernando Alonso go on for 50 minutes, and it was a historic presser, probably the biggest presser in IndyCar history in like 30 years, and it was just amazing. I mean, I don't know. I got to meet him personally. I got to shake his hand. I didn't know what to say. I went hi, and I shook his hand. He went hello, and he shook my hand, and he walked away. And I was like, I just shook Fernando Alonso's hand and said hi.
That would be awesome. I mean, that would be. Yeah,
I have to say.
I never used to be a big Fernando fan, and then I think the more that he's struggled, the more character I think he's shown. And I've properly warmed up to him, and now he's one of my favourite drivers on the grid. But he never, kind of like the journey that you went on with Ricciardo, Missy. Yeah. I was very much to say didn't really engage with Alonso as a driver or as a person, and then you actually start to see those flashes of genius that people say he's one of the best drivers on the grid. You can see it now. And for me as well, that was my evolution of understanding the sport. That was my evolution of understanding racecraft, and actually now being able to spot it in other drivers. And see it in someone like Alonso. So yeah, I've really warmed to him, and the fact that you managed to meet him, doesn't matter what you said to him. Probably Ola would have been better, but who cares?
Well,
a shake of the hand and a hello to Fernando Alonso is outstanding.
Yeah, the first question that was asked to him was from a CNN reporter, and he went on for about 3 minutes in Spanish. I can't speak Spanish, so I had no idea. And Fernando's, he's got his arms crossed, he's looking at him. And as the question got more and longer, you could see him get more and more frustrated. Fernando's answer to him literally was 3 Spanish words, and that means he said 1 word to him. So I don't know what he said. I don't know what the question was, but he was just so aggravated after that. But then I think it was David Molster asked him a question and got him laughing, because I think he asked him something about, have you noticed a huge difference between the racers in IndyCar compared to the racers in Formula One? And he starts laughing. He goes, "We don't talk," and he starts laughing. And then that broke the ice. I mean, there was so much tension in the room after that, and that broke the tension, and the whole room just got happy. Fernando had a big smile, and everybody's asking questions, and it just went on. It was probably the coolest experience I ever. witnessed. Really. I don't know if you caught that presser or not, but
No, I didn't see it, but it sounds very good.
well, you can see it. Missy recorded the entire thing. Where, Missy?
You can find that on any of our social media, and you can go through our website, which is www.theindysportscarpodcast.com.
That's right. And the NRF1 podcast, they are pretty much everywhere you listen to podcasts. If you're listening to this podcast, chances are the NRF1 podcast is also on the same platform you're listening to this, because you guys are on Podbean. If you didn't know that you are, because that's where I listen to you at, because that's where we're from. So, Perry, where could they find all of your social media and the NRF1 podcast social media?
Yep. So we've got the @NRF1 is our Twitter handle. Our Facebook is @NRF1 as well. The nrf1.uk is our website. Get on there and that'll tell you where you need to go. Our podcasts, you can find them on iTunes, Acast, Spreaker, Stitcher, Audio Boom. But if you go to nrf1.uk/pod, subscribe, that will tell you every single player and location that you can find our podcast. So that's how to get in contact with us. And you can email us. I believe we are at the NRF1 podcast @gmail.com. So everything that you send through to us, we'll happily read out on the podcast. We like hearing from you guys. We like hearing from everyone and talking all things Formula One.
Yep. And I even heard Michael say, if you can't find it, just email him and he'll help you out. That's how good.
Absolutely right. Yeah, that's it. That's how good a guy Michael is. Yeah.
Right on. Perry, it was a pleasure, sir. It really was.
Oh, thank you. It's been great chatting to you about all things motorsport.
Yeah, I mean, we could keep going for hours, but unfortunately,
we could.
Unfortunately, we gotta give the listeners a break to go get a coffee or go make some tea. So
some tea. That's it. Yeah.
There you go. And I just want to let you guys know, they were grateful enough to have me on their podcast last week. It's the if you look at whatever podcatcher app or wherever you look at their library, I believe it says Julian Palmer. It's E173. I'm on there. Just listen to it. I'm on there. Their podcasts are very. I mean, every minute of it's just fun listening. They're a lot like us. They're very loose, funny, crack jokes. There are bleeps everywhere.
yeah. Sometimes we forget, but I think I've managed to keep it fairly clean for you guys today. But
that's good because I don't edit.
If you want to hear probably the most bleeps we've ever had in a podcast, check out our Baku review, which I think is episode 177.
Yes.
And that's just recently come out, and that's Michael bleeping all over the place. So that's always worth a listen.
And again, Michael, if you're listening to this, thank you for giving me another shout out and our show another shout out at the beginning of that podcast. That was very nice of you, sir. Thank you. So, Perry, again, all I can say is I hope you come back. And
be my pleasure.
All right.
I'd love to come back. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Missy. It's been great to be on.
All right,
yes, thank you.
And Missy, I think on that note.
Yes, I just want to throw out one more thing before we end this. Okay. Make sure you guys subscribe or check out, of course, what we're involved in, audibleflagging.com. Yes. Follow us on Twitter @audibleflagging, Facebook audibleflagging. So look for big things happening with that in the near future. So on that note, that I know that Frank even knows, but definitely Perry knows,